Hello, I'm Gareth.
And I'm Shane, and welcome to Building Business Resilience.
This is a podcast from Sanctuary Financial Planning, which helps growth business owners and social media influencers achieve financial independence.
We're two passionate financial planners on a mission to seek out new ideas, tips and tricks to help you take control of your finances and run better businesses.
We delve into the true goals and aspirations of our guests in order to provide you with some real value and positivity.
Nothing outrageous, clear, simple, solid financial solutions. We also have a YouTube series to accompany this, and details will be at the end of the show. So let's move on to our guest.
It's episode 22, and in today's show, we're going to be talking to Ian Bird. Ian is a sports agent and is part of the World in Motion team, who he joined up several years in the industry. Spent establishing Evolution Sports Management, specialising in cricket, rugby and boxing. Based in Cardiff and London, the business established a strong market presence, and Ian has developed a reputation of honest and ethical management. Ian looks after a group of talented sports people, some of who he mentions during the chat. We chat today about all things sport, post-COVID, business and managing his clients. So without much further ado, let's get started. Hi Ian, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So how's things? How's lockdown been? Back in work?
Yeah, as you can see the branding there over my shoulder, back in the office here in Cardiff. Slowly trying to get back to normal, I think, is where we are as a business. Lockdown was a very strange time. Just chatting with my dad about it last night. You know, we were kind of just trying to get our heads around what we're actually going through, you know, and what we've been through. And I don't think it'll actually sink in until we fully come out the other side and we look back and think, did we actually shut everything down for 3 months? You know, were we told like in a draconian way by the government that you're not allowed to go out? You know, and when you actually say that and it sinks in, you think you can't actually believe it. You know, it's been a really surreal time, and you know, we work in the sports industry. I say we, World in Motion, and to have something that you become so used to in sport, in everyday life, not for everybody, but for a vast majority of people, to have your livelihood just stop, you know, and sport does so much, I think, you know, to the fabric of society, and it adds so much, you know, to people's health, well-being and state of mind generally, you know, to have all of that just taken away, and you know, just having to watch reruns of FA Cup finals from 1978 on a Saturday at 3:00 was just bizarre, you know. And I really hope we never see anything like it again. But you ask how lockdown was, it was okay. You know, it was actually for once quite nice for the first couple of weeks to stop, you know, just stop running around, stop having to be somewhere, constantly worrying if your phone's going to ring or not, you know, just and do nothing. I think that part of it was nice, you know. And I always I liken it to, and when people have asked me, is when you're self-employed and you work for yourself, you never really shut off. Well, I don't.
Yeah. You
can go on holiday, and some of the benefits of the type of job that you do allow you to have time where you can work really from anywhere. But the only time I ever used to think that I could relax was on Christmas Day and Boxing Day, because everything else is shut down. You know, nobody else is working, so you don't have to worry. That was kind of the feeling you had in the first stages of this lockdown. Well, for once you can actually just relax and your mind can stop working. And, you know, for years and years, you know, as a self-employed guy and being my own business effectively, you know, I've always had to be constantly thinking I'm going to pay my mortgage at the end of each month. And, you know, that goes through your mind constantly. And the lockdown was like, right, you can't do anything. Nobody's doing anything. Everyone's locked in their house. You know, it's actually all right to watch 10 episodes of Netflix in a row and not feel guilty about it because you haven't replied to an email or you haven't done something. So I think there were some positives, and I think everybody will have enjoyed the partial part of shutting down in some capacity. the fallout of which, will be seen in months to come. But, I think a lot of us won't take things for granted anymore. And the ability to just jump in your car and drive somewhere, jump on a train or catch a plane, or all of those things that we all took for granted and became so accustomed and easy for people, were taken away from you. And it's at those times, I think, where you just take stock and you think, do you know what? We're very lucky, to do what we do, and you should never take that for granted. And I think that's one of the big things I'll take from certainly the last 6 months.
Yeah. Do you think, you mentioned there about taking stock, has there been times, I've just noticed it over the last few weeks, where you're in a bubble world now? This is just the norm at the moment. It is just the whole world. Do you sometimes take a step back if you're traveling back from somewhere, if you're on a plane or you're driving at the moment, and you go, what the hell is going on in the world? This is just mental. This is not normal. When will it be normal again? And what will the new normal look like?
Yeah, I do. And I think at the moment everybody is. I think, we one of the boys actually in the office made the comment the other day. I think there's one lockdown, I think, in everybody. And I think we've had that now, to try and I know there's going to be localized sort of outbreaks, and, there'll be lockdowns in certain areas moving forward. But everyone's now like, how do we get on now? We have to find a way to get on, and what that looks like, and how as a society we find a way to get on. Because if we don't, sooner or later, there's going to be some real pain, and we want to try and avoid that. And there's going to be a generation of maybe 18 to 23, 24-year-olds that are going to find it very difficult in certain industries to find work. And, whilst everyone's been on furlough and, having house parties and barbecues in the garden and it's been nice, okay, that's been great. But now, come on, we gotta start thinking, how do we work with this thing? Because it ain't going away, sadly. And I wake up daily and, flick onto the news and think, right, come on, today's the day. Come on, let's have some good news. And there have been snippets of good news about vaccines and possibly drugs that can help, not make people or stop people getting so sick. And I think if we can get to a point where there can be something developed that can stop people getting so sick and for the need to be admitted to hospital, we can get on then. I think at that point, the vaccine becomes less important than, the drugs that can help, just the same as a flu jab. But, if you get a cold, you have the flu, you get drugs for it, and you get better as soon as you can. I think as soon as we get to that point, then I would consider us being on the road to becoming back to normal. But until that, it's just not going away, sadly.
Yeah, it's a big thing. It's the unknown, isn't it? We don't know when the end is, and I think everyone's kind of looking for that answer, but there isn't one. I think you're right. I think we can't go into another state of lockdown, like a proper one, because the economy won't cope with it. We're going to see the redundancies we'll see out of this in the next 12 months will be phenomenal, sadly. I just think we've just got to try and adapt to it, because this isn't going to be the last time we have a coronavirus. There's going to be another one, isn't there? I think this is sadly how the world's going to be, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And there'll be scientists that have warned of this, and the fallout and the inquiry into how it was handled initially, will be talked about. But, we need to be more prepared for something like this in the future. I think that's one of the clear, things to come out of this, and, you look at them in Asia and the way they've dealt with it, even though, the origins of the disease and how that all came about will be, for people to debate on for years to come. But, they're used to wearing masks when they got a cold, and they seem almost better equipped to deal with this, and they also do as they're told, which again, you could debate about how their countries are run with communist regimes, etc. But, we're not very good at doing as we're told in the West, are we? This, and I'm not saying that we should adapt communist regimes. I'm just saying that sometimes we can be a bit better behaved.
Oh yeah, well, we think we know better.
Responsible. Well, we do.
We know better, don't we? Especially in Wales.
Oh,
there's parts of Wales which it was like lockdown. What? No, that's not happening here.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but I guess I hope we've got through the worst of it. I think we have.
Yeah.
I think it is that you kind of do wake up. I've stopped watching the news really because I want to see some positivity. Like I try to be as positive as I can. Try and keep the negative people out of my life as best I can.
Yeah.
But you know what it's like in Wales, especially read the Wales Online.
All right, let's not say anything that'll get us into trouble.
Oh, don't worry.
Leave that to the rugby players.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll get on to something a bit, I guess, more lighter. So, tell us about your journey, your career so far. I guess where it all started.
Yeah, well, I came out of school, and the ambition for me back then, when I was a 16, 17-year-old, was to be a cricketer. And Shane, you'll know one of my very close friends, Will Bragg. He's a bit younger than me, although he looks older and heavier. Is a good friend of mine, and I played cricket. It was my thing from the year from 9 years of age, and my ambition was always to want to be a professional cricketer. And I gave summers up, through those ages of 17 onwards, where friends would be going on holiday, and I was trying to make it as a professional cricketer, and three other very good friends of mine in Mark Wallace, Ian Thomas, who I think Gareth. I don't know if you might have went to school with
Yeah, I went to school with Ian. Yeah, he came to Basildon in sixth form, so I played rugby with him Mackin as well. So
that's right, he did say. And Mark Wallace, the four of us. Will's a bit younger, but still a close friend. But the four of us kind of grew up playing together, and those three went on to have professional careers, whereas I didn't. And it was tough for me at the time because they were off enjoying this professional sports lifestyle, and I had to go back to university and did a degree up at UWIC, as it was called then. I don't actually know what it's called now. It's had so many different names. It's University of South Wales or something, but it was UWIC back then. And they'd started a cricket academy there for guys pretty much like me who'd missed out on the opportunity, to win a contract. And then you go into uni, you get a degree, and you're still in the shop window because you play against all of the first class counties, and that didn't really work out either. I did a degree in sport and PE, which I probably regret doing now, because the thought was that I'd just be a PE teacher because I loved sport and always played football, rugby and things coming through school and in university. And then came out of university, thinking I don't want to be a PE teacher. And I'd always had this knack of selling stuff. And through university, I'd always have, I'd be buying watches and things on eBay and having them in the boot of my car and selling them to some of the richer posh students from London and things like that. They were knockoff watches, but they didn't know any different, and friends of mine from the village where I'm from in Pontypool, there was a tie factory in Pontypool, and they used to make the ties for Hugo Boss and Paul Smith and all these things. And one of my mates was on the dispatch bit of that, and he used to get the ties that would miss a stitch or that didn't make it into the shops. He'd half-inch them out of the back of the warehouse because they wouldn't do anything with them. They'd just recycle them and put them back through the machine, and I'd sell those, to friends and colleagues of mine in the cricketing world who were in business as lawyers and things like that. So I always had this kind of knack for wanting to sell stuff because I loved it and I got a buzz from it. So I came out of uni with a sports degree thinking I was going to be a PE teacher, and I took a job because my parents said, listen, you got to get a job. You're 22 years of age, you're living at home, you got to get a job. We can't afford to keep you. And I took a job with the South Wales Argus in Newport, selling advertising space over the telephone. And it was okay. It was hard. It's actually one of the hardest things I've ever I've ever had to do. You know, to ring a greengrocer up and sell him a £15 advert and they tell you that they can't afford it is one of the most demoralizing things you could ever wish to do, because the next day you got to ring him again and again and again. And that taught me how to sell and how to present a case for people to buy something from you over the phone. And I don't know if you guys, I mean, everyone's selling something, right? We're all selling something, whether it's ourselves, whether it's a product, whether it's yourself to somebody else. We're all selling something at some stage. And that really taught me how to do that. I had a very good manager at the time who you know, saw that I had a little bit of something, a little bit of personability, and people, in my opinion, will buy people. I think if you're a good person and people believe in you when you're talking and selling them something, they will buy off the back of your integrity, I think. And for me, that little period taught me how to sell and the art of selling. And I then went and graduated from that into taking a little job, which was out on the road. So I got a company car. And then given what I'd done with the sports element, I was selling advertising space into the sports section of the newspaper. So I was dealing with the WRU, for example, and that. So for me, that was great. You know, I had a company car, company credit card. It was a Fiesta 1.4 diesel. I remember it now. It was 51 plate, and I thought I was the bomb. You know, I was on the road. I had a mobile phone. You know, I didn't have to go into the office. I had my own little business within a business, if you like, and you have your targets. And I responded to that. And I think sports people generally, you know, I think it's why they're so employable when they come out of professional sport, because they've got a hunger to hit targets and there's a desire, you know, and we mentioned him before, Shane, you know, Will, you know, he's a clever fellow, Will, but he had a great cricket career and probably should have gone on a longer one, really, but he decided to come out because he wanted to succeed in business, and he's doing that now. And I think lots of my friends and people that I know that have gone on and had rugby careers and things, when they come out of professional sport, they're highly employable because they've got a drive and a motivation to want to win all the time. And I think that's what's always stood me in good stead, is that I've always wanted to win and always wanted to hit a target, and, you know, having the ability to survive when I started my business. And, you know, I mentioned selling ties and car watches and things. I've brokered cars, and over the years I've done anything that I've needed to do in the world that I've been in, because I've been friendly with so many professionals, sports people, to survive and get to a point where I started signing clients and set up my sports management business and grew that to a point of about 40 or so clients, which I managed all on my own. You know, I had an online secretarial service that, you know, would take calls for me, and, you know, and all of that. And the opportunity with World in Motion came along. But, you know, when I started out, you know, I was very lucky to have, you know, some good support with the thought of being self-employed. And I think that's important when, you know, when anybody's thinking of doing it. It's not for everyone, and it can be very hard sometimes, and you have to do whatever you can to get through. And, you know, and this is not a violin moment, but it is, you know, you really do have to do, you've got to do what you got to do sometimes. And, you know, I learned a lot in those years where I was scrambling around trying to find a way, and, you know, eventually get to where I was, to the point where I had some clients, and I had a little stable of players. You know, a few of them were my friends. I never made any money out of that. And then, you know, you become enough of a nuisance as an independent. You know, you nick a client here or there, and you're like a wasp around a jam jar, really. You become as much of a pest as you can, that someone will take notice, come in and sweep you up. And not that I was a pest to World in Motion, but we were introduced to I was introduced to them through a third party friend, and the owner is a Welshman, and very successful business, which was established in 1997. And we met up for dinner and a few beers in Park Plaza. back in 2018. And prior to that, I'd had a couple of conversations with law firms and things that, about, because it's quite funky for people to have a bit of a sports management arm attached to their law firm. I think that there's a few out there that do it that way, but, it wasn't the right fit. But I met with Andy and Andy Evans, who's the chairman owner of World in Motion, and we got on straight away. He's a mad Cardiff City fan and Welsh rugby, and he's got the benches in the stadium and season tickets and all these things in Cardiff. And the fit was just right, and you blokes being in business yourselves will know sometimes, and I mentioned it earlier, people buy people. I bought him, and we did a deal, joined World in Motion, and, I haven't really looked back from there.
Is it a thing that sometimes you just get that tingle, the feeling that you just think it's right? It's just go with it. Sometimes they say gut instinct, just go, just let it.
Yeah, you do. And I spoke to a few people, and bounced off them, because I'd gone on various wild goose chases really with firms in London and met with guys that, were chances really. And, you never really know unless you know somebody what you're getting involved with. And it's quite personal to me because it was, it was mine. I built it. And, I'd spoken to people who knew Andy, and they said, he's a good guy, and, you should go with your gut instinct. And the gut instinct was to go with it. And like I say, we haven't looked back, and we've built a business now where he was purely football before, and we're running about 15 or so agents throughout Europe, and we've got one in America who does the MLS. But now we're a multi-sport offering with rugby, cricket, boxing, and we've got a golfer. And for me now, the focus is managing and maintaining the group of players that I've got within rugby, cricket, and the two boxers that I've got, the three boxers that I've got in, who are actively professionals at the moment. But, golf for me is a game I've always loved. I've never been really any good at it. But the golf world is one where I'm really intrigued and looking to try and build that business up now for us in World in Motion.
Do you know what I loved earlier? You mentioned your friend Will, and then you absolutely slated him. Yeah. and then you came back a couple of minutes later and go, yeah, but he should have done a lot better. You go, oh no, I've just said something wrong. I'm gonna get slated by him.
Oh no, I wasn't worried about saying anything wrong. I was a bit of a mentor to Will when he was a young kid, but I think they call it, I don't know if you're allowed to swear, but it's a shit sandwich, isn't it? It's two nice bits and then the shit in the middle. Yeah, he won't mind if he listens to it.
My neighbour here, as you probably know, Dean Cosgrove, I've seen him sporting a few dodgy ties over the years, so I presume they were yours, were they?
I don't know if he actually bought any off me, Dean, but I played a lot of cricket with Dean, for Glamorgan, second team, and, he kind of was in that point where he'd been to Millfield, he'd come out, he played his second team cricket before me, but there was a bit of crossover, and I've had some great nights out over the years with Dean, and they're good times when you look back on them. I was lucky enough to go to Australia in 1999 to play a winter abroad, I'd had the Millennium, New Year's Eve, and the Sydney Harbour and all of that stuff. But you look back to then, sort of 1997 through to about 2003, where I was involved in that cricket scene, and we had some great times, really great times. Dean had a house in Cardiff. There were a few other young lads who were on the staff full time, and they bought houses, and weekends would involve nights out in Brannigan's and on Mill Lane and things like that. The good old days. I know it sounds cliche, but they literally were. They were great.
In fairness, nights out with Mr. Cosgrove are still the good old days, because I think he's still, any night I've had out with him is still a party night in his.
Listen, the lurker, we call him.
Anyways. Do you know what has changed, or how have you adapted the working pattern or the business since March? Because like everyone, we all had, I suppose, business plans and this, that, and the other that we're planning ahead for the rest of the year, and then bang, this thing happened. So how have you guys as a business changed the pattern or adapted it?
Well, I think initially we were probably all in a bit of a state of shock, because a big part of what we do is attending fixtures and fights or events, and they all stopped. So it was a case of having to just sort of regroup. We do have a management group within the business that consists of 5 of us, all in our various heads of departments. So you got the chairman, the CEO, head of rugby, head of football, and then they call me head of everything else because I do other sports other than just one. So we used to meet once a month anyway. So we kind of thought, right, everybody's locked away in their own part of the world, wherever they may be. We as a management group need to meet weekly. So we did that every Monday. We had a Zoom call and we met weekly and we talked about the situation and, found ourselves talking about things within the business that you never really get the time to focus on when you're running around chasing revenue. So we've actually found that our business model and the way in which we conduct our business will probably change for the better in that, and I talk more so with football on this because we run at about 200 or so football clients, and a lot of that work involves travel and expense. And we, during this period, have seen a big saving in that because it was budgeted for. So we've not had that expense. So that's now on our bottom line, and we've seen that we're actually in a better position than we would be if the agents are running around doing their business.
Yeah.
But they've continued to do that business, but they've done it through Zoom and Teams and those sorts of things. So I think from our perspective, instead of jumping, or from the football point of view, jumping on a plane and flying to Germany for the day and costing a business $1,000 in a hotel, dinner with a sporting director and a return flight, that first meeting can be done via this platform. No different to what we're doing now. And then you find out if something is worth pursuing. I think that's one of the big things for us. The way we will do our business initially now will change, and I think that will be the same for other businesses. Now, you guys, with what you do, and us to a degree, you do need that element of social interaction with your clients. You have to have that. I'm not saying that goes away, but I've not spoken to my clients any less through lockdown than I would have done if in fact, I might have spoken and seen more of them through Zoom than I would have done if I was on the ground running around. Because again, we talked about earlier, taking things for granted and just running around. We were, all of us were conscious to be Zooming and checking in on people, and we still had those meetings, but we did them without costing the business any money in terms of expenses. And I think that's one of the big things, we've taken from this period of the last 6 months.
So like a triage process.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that will change. We will do more of these. Sessions of groups of agents wherever you are. We'll you can have a meet. You haven't got to bring everyone into London now and cost the business $10,000 to do it. You can do it this way.
Is the business going to be then a bit like we've done? Gareth mentioned a triage system there, where capacity will not allow you as a business to look after everyone. So for us, finance, for you guys in the sporting world, and you have to be able to enjoy the work that you do. And there may be some people sometimes that would be profitable for a business, but you may not enjoy working with them or working for them, and it may become a bit of a bugbear, and eventually, as much as you get paid for it, you don't want to do it. So I know for us, we've done, as Gareth said, a triage system or almost a gatekeeper, that we'll chat to them like this first, so it doesn't cost us our time going out to see them. So I suppose, is that the way you guys have taken it forward, that you will do this initial meeting? There is still a requirement or a need to shake hands when we're allowed in the future and have that social interaction because people buy from people, but the initial conversations you can have like this and see if there's a feel for it without costing you or the business a shed load of money.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's different a little bit from a client management perspective because this will never replace that. I think that if you're looking to try and set up maybe, links with other businesses or like a lot of our work, again, I come back to football, but it's the easiest way to try and explain to you that, a lot of work in football is done via brokering and other agents and other agencies. And the game is a worldwide game. So you have to be flexible to do that. I think this is where that will benefit, if you're at the forefront of it and you're proactive on that side of things, as opposed to having to fly here, there and everywhere to do that. I think that's what will change our business.
Yeah.
But when we do come back to normal and that time will come, everyone's going to be, and we're finding it now this week. I've been to coffee shops to meet clients and met with the regions this week, to talk about plans moving forward there and players and life is slowly coming back to normal. But, I think this has changed the business dynamic for everybody moving forward and, in some ways for the better. And you could argue that First Great Western have been having it away for years, charging an absolute fortune for a terrible service from Cardiff to Paddington. It might wake them up a little bit now and think, well, look, our numbers are down. We need to do a bit better than what we're doing.
Has the first class carriage been bad for you then over the last few years? The standard has been fine for us.
I sit at the back, mate. I sit at the back. Yeah, we're not allowed our expenses don't allow for that. If you want to do that, you got to pay for it yourself. And it's a good policy, actually, because people, when they got to pay for it themselves, don't like paying for it, especially on First Great Western. Unless it's on a weekend and you can do a Super Saver upgrade for 45 quid, then that's a different question.
That's what I do it.
Exactly.
What do you think that the changes will be? You talked about you guys changing. What will the sporting environment look like post-COVID? Because Gareth said off air about, is it Gloucester that were potentially in a bit of a mess going forward? And I know Exeter brought it up in terms of rugby, but is football recession-proof? You mentioned the boxes. I presume that's Joe and Liam Williams. And, if people are not going to see them, will they be affected and stuff like that?
Yeah, look, I think, the boxers are self-employed. So if they don't fight, they don't earn any money. And it's the same with the golfer. If he doesn't play golf, Andrew, he doesn't earn any money. And I think, is sport recession proof? I thought it was, because I've never seen anything like this. None of us have. People would always find a way to get 75 quid to go and watch Wales play rugby. The stadium has never not been full unless it's the Autumn International against Fiji. All of the games are full. So everybody would be right in thinking sports recession proof. Nobody would have ever expected something like this to take sport away. And so the bigger clubs will survive. You've seen already there have been a few clubs that will go into administration. And I think when the furlough scheme ends in October, you might see more lower league clubs. If there are no supporters at that stage, and even in rugby, and you look at the regions, even though crowds aren't massive for regional rugby, they still top up, and if spectators aren't allowed back, and I think plans are for that to happen in the autumn, the professional game is going to continue to struggle for however long this goes on for, and nobody's really got the answer. Even though I could argue that what's the difference of being sat in a stadium socially distanced to being sat in Roath Park without a mask on, and you can't police it, whereas you can police a stadium. You can steward it properly. You can insist on people wearing masks. If they don't, they get thrown out. Hand sanitizing points, etc., etc. I don't see personally any difference. Why shouldn't people be allowed into a golf course if they can socially distance to watch golf when they can go for a day out on the beach with hundreds of thousands of people in Brighton and you're closer? It does not make any sense to me whatsoever. And it's all political and they can't be seen to be allowing this to happen. And, it's a shambles, I think, the whole thing. in that respect, and because I'm in the industry, it makes me slightly annoyed that, everyone will blame, you can't have supporters in the ground, there's no social distancing. Well, that's not true. You can actually social distance in an all-seater stadium. You can allow capacity of up to 50% and everyone's spaced out. What's the difference? You're outdoors. You've said that this virus doesn't react well to outdoors. Well, this is outdoors. Sport can't survive without spectators, and people always harp on about broadcast money, and that's a massive element to how the game is run, but it can't survive on that alone. It needs footfall through the turnstiles in all aspects, and secondary spend in stadiums on your burger and your chips and your beers and your hospitality has gone, and that needs to come back quickly. Otherwise, the game. It's a worry. It really is a worry. For the first time, again, I go back to it in my lifetime experience. Professional sport does not know where it's going.
It's a crazy one with the golf that 7,000 or 8,000 yards of a golf course for the pros times two sides. So you're looking at potentially 16,000 yards. If it's 2 meters a go, I can't convert yards to meters, but surely you could have 10,000 spectators in a golf course, all distancing themselves. And I have never been to an indoor golf club. So everything is outdoors, as you say. So, distance themselves, it just seems crazy. Of all of the sports, that's the main one, I suppose. Maybe along with horse racing, that you kind of go, there's so much space. Start bringing people back.
But you're allowed to sit on a plane. Closer to somebody than you would be if you were outside watching sport.
Yeah.
Well, how does that work? Because it's a personal choice. You don't have to fly, but you also don't have to go and watch sport. But surely it could be made available to people. And if they want to go and watch, you understand the risks, just like you would understand the risks if you go out in the winter and you sit next to someone who's got a cold. And I know this virus is terrible, and I'm not playing it down. Yeah. People have lost loved ones, and it's been cruel, and that is the sad reality. Is that it's a horrible thing, but also we have to find a way of living with it, because it's not going away.
Is it a thing of I'm going to try and say this in a very diplomatic way, as you say, because there's a lot of loved ones that have been lost, we need to get back to the old normality in some way, but in a very protective manner. And the longer people stay away from things, potentially the more it plays on their mind and the more fearful they get, and to the point then they go, I don't feel safe there. Let people do what they want to a degree in a safe manner, but give them the option of going to an event or not going to an event. And if you do go to an event, it is in a protective environment as much as possible.
Look, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And I think, at the risk of sounding controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway, people who are saying that they're afraid to go back into an office environment, or they fear for their health and well-being, it's okay for a nurse to go and treat a COVID patient then, is it? You tell me what's the difference. So it's okay for them to go and risk their lives to potentially save you if you're sick, but you're too afraid to go into work, but you'll do the conga around your street with all your mates, having a barbecue and all the rest of it. I think that there's a big disparity, I think, in people's mindsets when it suits them. And again, without wanting to downplay the seriousness and people who have lost loved ones and things, it's dreadful. And I feel desperately sorry for them. But, it's okay for the nurses and the NHS to go to the front line and go to work. But you're afraid to go into people who are saying they're afraid to go back to work, and teachers' unions and all this, they're saying that it's not safe and things. If you go in and the correct procedures are taken, then why isn't it safe? The government are telling you it's safe if you follow the guidelines and you act socially responsible. Don't go hugging someone who you don't know who they are or where they've been, which you wouldn't do anyway. And I'm being a little bit facetious, I suppose, but I'm trying to make a point that we have to. This can't go on forever. What are we going to do? Just keep locking down and keep having 20% of GDP wiped off each time we go into lockdown, and just hope the government will bail us out. And, this is going to have to be paid for at some stage. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to do that we have to do it by finding a way to get on, you know, and giving people the choice. If you don't want to go and watch sport, or you don't want to go to the cinema, or you don't want to go to a restaurant, don't go. But the option's there if you want to. And I think we need to try and be a bit more proactive with, you know, and I made a point on Twitter the other day of saying that the media are a pain in the arse with this. It's like, it's almost as if they're desperate for a second wave, you know, to serialize it. It's like second wave, you know, lockdown 2 come in and scaremongering and stuff, you know. It's like, come on, guys. You know, I mean, I know you're trying to sell newspapers. I know you're trying to sell adverts on the TV, but you know, you've got a responsibility to report sensibly on this. You're reporting on all the deaths. You're not reporting on the recoveries. You know, why aren't you now reporting on the fact that there are hardly anybody in hospital with this? Why aren't you reporting that there have been no deaths for a long time now? You know, why isn't that being serialized? Why isn't the upside being talked about as opposed to, you know, the biggest recession in our history? Shock. We knew that was going to happen. Everything was shut down. You know, but the recovery was quite sharp in terms of the 8% growth we had over, I think it was June. July looks like it'll be even bigger. Hopefully August will continue in that trend. And this is if we can maintain that. Again, your guys' world, not mine, but I do watch and listen and like to take interest.
Good news.
But that doesn't get talked about. It was the 20% drop. Oh, recession. Biggest recession ever. Okay, well, that's obvious.
Yeah, it's a negative events world service, isn't it? You know, that's what news stands for. And they never like to put anything extremely positive. We see it all the time. You see billions wiped off the stock market. But you never see billions wiped back on the stock market, which is what happens.
Well, interestingly, you bought the billions back up on the stock market. The Chinese, straight in there, weren't they?
Yeah. Buying all the kind of low stock. You know, they were buying bank shares that were going to fashion.
They're not in recession. I don't think they ever went into recession.
No.
It's a total behavioural thing with everyone. You know, we've chatted about it to people we look after, where, you know, you wouldn't sell your house if it was decreasing in value, and then you wouldn't buy it back 6 weeks later because it went up in value. That's just, but the mentality when you're doing these type of things is when things go wrong, you sell, and when they're getting back to better, you buy. But as long as you plan for a specific goal or objective, it's a bit like your sports people. You don't just, you know, oh, I've got £1,000 spare or 40 grand, I'm going to do this. There has to be a route or a specific objective for everything you do, and then it's a behavioural thing. Do you know, it's exactly like the sports people. But you mentioned there about the mindset, and I've noticed this today. I think one of your guys, Mr. Beef Johnson, tweeted something today about some poor girl that took her own life and stuff like that. And, you know, I think he put something along there of, you know, it's okay not to be okay, and people need to talk. But talking about, you know, toughness and mental strength and stuff like that, we're all going to have shit days, and we've all had shit days in this time scale. And if we haven't, then it's the Instagram thing that everything is fine, because it's not all fine for everyone, and it's absolutely okay to have the shit days because it's not normal. But how do you cope as a, you know, someone that is talking to people day on day, and you know, staff, clients, family, friends? How do you park those shit days and get on with it?
You just have to, but you know, you also have to realize that, you know, sometimes even though you're trying to be that mentor, manager, friend, you know, to them, you know, if you've got the relationship and you've got that long-standing relationship, they can do that for you too. And I think, you know, it's something that you know, we're all more aware now of mental health than I think we've ever been. You know, it was always a taboo subject, and you know, even me, perhaps because of the way I was brought up, and my dad, you know, depression wasn't really a word. It was just, come on, shake yourself, get on with it. Whereas now you have to be more sensitive towards people's mental health, because it is a disease just like anything else. And unfortunately, I think that as a result of maybe some of the financial hardships that come out of the coronavirus, lots of people will take their own life because they become financially unable to support themselves. and the prevention of this disease may be worse than the actual disease itself in the secondary deaths, and people not going to hospital to have cancers and things examined and explored, and there is a massive outcry now for that. We're being encouraged to go out and not let the virus defeat us. Then people should be encouraged to talk about their problems and visit hospital to get checked out. And I having Andrew particularly and managing Andrew from, as in Andrew Johnson, Beef, the golfer, from last April. He's someone that's had his own well-documented battles with mental health. And he's somebody now, having come through all of that, is really refreshing to speak to. And I think in time, if I've ever got a problem with a client that may be experiencing those, and he's offered very, gratefully to us as a business, that if you're having anybody with interest, I'll speak to them. And I think the way in which, because he had a little wobble a couple of weeks ago with the bubble, on the tour, and how it's a very intense environment, and he didn't prepare properly for it. He'll openly tell you that he didn't prepare properly for it. Went into the bubble and he thought, I can't deal with this. There's no crowds. There's, I can't touch the flagstick, or I can't go, and he walked off after 9 holes. And we chatted about it this morning. He's on his way to practice, and then he's heading back down for the second event at the Celtic Manor. He got annoyed with himself after it because he knows he shouldn't have done it. But he got to a point where he was that anxious about the whole situation that he just walked off. And he wasn't having a great round, and I think that was building in him as well. And I was watching it on Sky, and they weren't covering him live, but I knew he was about halfway. My phone rang, and it was him. And I thought, it's just gone off in his bag, or, it's a mistake, because, you don't hear from them when they're playing. So it rang out, and he rang again. And I thought, oh, shit, something's wrong here now. He's either been disqualified or something's happened. Anyway, he phoned me and he said, look, I'm walking off. I've walked off course. I'm going home. I can't deal with it. And at that point, you have to think, right, okay, well, that's fine. You have to be that supporting ear. And he couldn't deal with it. And I think a lot of golfers, the big golfers, they're not playing every tournament, and I think for particularly the ones who travel the world constantly, we mentioned it earlier about the break and the rest. This will be the first time some of them have had an enforced break without injury in their lives, and now trying to find a way back to play in and dealing with the real strength. I think, and the point I'm trying to make with Andrew is that he went away. He refocused his mind and built a plan in how he was going to come back and deal with it. And he finished strongly 2 weeks ago in the UK Championship. And he was in with a chance of winning on the weekend just gone. And he's now all of a sudden in the top 10 in the Order of Merit for the UK swing over the 6 events, which carries with it an automatic qualifying place for the US Open. So the two ends of the spectrum for him, from not playing another round of golf this year or until COVID sorts itself out, to this could go on for I don't know how long. I've got to play to support my family. I need to refocus my mind and find a way through it, to now looking at playing potentially in the US Open. It's a remarkable turnaround. And for somebody to be able to have the mental strength and be open about talking about how he did that, I think deserves a lot of credit. And I've said that to him. And a lot of the media have discussed about the transformation in him. And you know what? He attributes a lot of the transformation to him with his training. And he started boxing training in that period where he was getting himself right. And it gave him that resilience to think, listen, I've got to tough this out. I've got to get back out. I've got to earn some money. I've got to support my family. And I want to play in the US Open. And fair play to him. It sounds easy because we're talking about it. Golf is a ruthless, hard game. and
but isn't it nice that it can be brought into this chat? And if he had a dose of squits, he'd walk off and he'd get his stomach right. If he twinged his hamstring or his Achilles, he'd go off and get it seen to. Now it's still an illness, an injury that he sorted his mind out, and he's just come back. And as you say, it's the strength of the man to be able to go recognise that it's not going right, and why continue? Because there was nothing physically wrong with him, but how many people would continue on? Whereas if they had something that was physically wrong, they'd walk off the course and say, hamstring's gone, I need 2 weeks to recover. Whereas with something like that, the strength, or as you say, the resilience to know this is not right, it's not going to do me any good, let's go, let me get sorted, however he gets sorted, and come back even stronger. Absolutely superb.
And that's what he's done, yeah. And it's testament to him for doing that, and not being afraid to say as well, and we had the conversation when he came off the course, are you injured? No. Okay, there's a media angle that we need to prepare for. You just tell the truth. I'm not playing because the bubble's not for me. And that's what we did. And fair play to him. He's not ashamed or afraid to say it. Yeah. I think more people should adopt that attitude. Yeah. And I think if more people do, there'll be a wider response and a receptiveness to people who are suffering with that mental health.
Somebody that's that open and in the public eye is superb to be able to acknowledge things that are going wrong, and that it's not okay to be okay. No, maybe we can convince you to get him on and have a chat with us at a later stage. But I was going to do something a bit difficult about balancing life and that. But we've done a lot of low stuff at the moment. Give us a couple of maybe highs of your career so far, and maybe if you're allowed to, the odd funny moment or funny story.
Look, it's always difficult when you put on the spot to do that. I mean, look, whenever one of your clients performs well, I always set out with the aim of never wanting to lose a client. You were going to do that well at managing them and looking after them, but you're never going to do that. You're always going to lose clients, and some will be more disappointing than others. But, I think for me, having a client that lined up for Wales, and being an avid Welsh rugby supporter and being in the stadium singing the anthem and being proud to have a client lined up playing for Wales was a proud moment, I think, if that's one. But any time, when boxers have won fights, you can't really explain that one, because you've got an emotional attachment to somebody who's in there having a scrap, basically, and to sometimes try and keep your emotions in check when they're fighting, because you are close to them, and it is difficult. And then when they win, it's absolutely fantastic feeling every time they do it. But lows, listen, we all have lows every day in some respect. You might lose a deal, or you might lose a player, or you might lose a pitch for a player, and you just have to keep bumbling along, and you have to realize that, when the times are good, it ain't going to last. And when the times are bad, they're not going to last. And I think if you can just keep that middle ground constantly and never get too excited when things are going great, and never too down when things are going bad, and always remember to be polite, courteous to everybody, and think that behind everybody something's always going on in their life, and I've learned that, particularly as a strength, and I hope that that's something that I've added to myself, is that don't always be so wrapped up in your own world. Somebody else is always going through something when you're in a meeting with them and you don't like what they're saying, or just take a little bit of stock. And I think for me, that's one thing that I've learned as I've gone through, and I'm still learning, and I'm hoping to have another 25 years in business. I'm giving my age away a little bit there now, even though the grey hair makes me look a little bit older than I actually am.
You work at 75?
Yeah. 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 Well, I hope to. I don't ever see a point where I want to retire. I don't want to be somebody that sits in the house and work stops. I don't think I would. I would be. Look, I might have a different approach to it when the time comes.
How many retired people actually want to go to a sporting event and talk to the sports stars themselves, i.e. the job they're doing at the moment?
This is right, and I feel very grateful to do the job that I do and in the industry that I do. We're all very, if you're in the industry and you work in the industry of sports management, it's not all glorious. It's not all Jerry Maguire stuff. I can assure you there's lots of bad aspects to the industry, but we're very lucky. And I for one, never, ever, ever take that for granted.
Do you know the funny thing? I think I saw a picture a few weeks ago, maybe with Joe Cordina, on Twitter or something. You represent almost the best of the sporting world, and they use the best technology, they use the best facilities and stuff like that. Do the people you've had to deal with, have they had to go back old school in the last few months of, the facilities have to? I saw one of the guys, the Welsh rugby guys, back in his own home club running with in a pitch with, tire behind him and stuff like that. It was like Josh Navidi or something. Have the guys had to go back to the old ways of doing things?
Yes. But he's interesting. You mentioned Josh. He's ex-client of mine and a good friend. But you look at the Boxers particularly, and it's easy to refer back to those because they do have it hard. And you look at Cordina, his dad's got a little barn down in Leckwith somewhere, I think. And, luckily for him, I got him a complimentary membership at David Lloyd. So there's me, idiot, paying for mine. I should have been a bit more on that one and got 2 rolled in for us. But, he's you probably see him down there. Well, you wouldn't have seen him recently.
I'll chat to you off here about a story I've had with him a few months ago.
Yeah. But his father set up a little, he's hung some bags from the farm that they've got down there in Letworth. And, he's training as hard as he ever has. He's had a little hand operation a few weeks back, which has been the perfect time for him to do that, and he's hoping to come back strong next year. And I think Boxers, they've got my total admiration for everything they put themselves through to get to earn a penny and make a living. And all of the other industries in professional sport, or the majority of the other industries, they have their training kit put out for them. They get told what to eat, when to eat it. And don't get me wrong, boxing's evolving and there are more personal trainers, and it's certainly involved more recently with the influx of better promoting and more money. But those boys, they earn it hard, and to have to get in a ring and scrap for a living is a tough thing to do. And they've got not only my admiration, but I think the fellow sporting professionals, particularly in Wales, like all the lads, the Welsh rugby boys, for example, they love the boxing. Whenever there's a fight in the stadium, the boys are always there. They've got, and the footballers to that end, they've got admiration for fighters. And to make a living as a fighter is one of the hardest ways to make a living.
Yeah, nice. So, what's next for you, World in Motion?
Look, I think we're always evolving. We've actually acquired some businesses during this period. So our stable of players is growing all the time. More recently, a rugby agency we've acquired and grown our stable of rugby players and given us a further foothold here in Wales. We're always on the lookout to try and grow, and if people have got an interest in the industry, we're always keen to hear from them to see if this is what they would like to do. And I think certainly for us over the course of the next 2 years, will be a period of, I think, consolidation and see what happens next, and how we can evolve to be able to be as lean as we can going forward, to make sure we come through it, and I'm sure that every business out there at the moment, no matter how much you've got in cash reserve, will be thinking, we don't know how long this is going to last. We need to be lean, and it's one of those things where you have to make sure that you can get through this. This nobody knows if this is going to go on for a year, 18 months, however long. We have to be prepared to keep scrapping as we are, being as lean as we can be, and ready to come out of it, sprinting the other side, I guess.
Brilliant.
It's great. It's interesting times ahead, and like you say, I think we're all ready to come out of it now. We just need to push on, don't we?
Absolutely. Get some sport on live.
I do miss that. I do miss that.
Really, it's been really, really enjoyable today. Appreciate you taking time out of the hectic day to have a chat with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Ian, great to chat to you today. A sports agent with a caring side to him, and someone who was always there for his clients. We'll be keeping an eye out for a few names we mentioned, such as Mr. Beef Johnson, Joe Cordina and Liam Williams, world champions in the future, hopefully. Head over to our website, www.sanfp.co.uk, to learn more about us and our journey. That's it for this episode. Next, we're talking all things bikes, swims, runs, Ironman, and becoming a world champion. It's Ruth Astle. You can hear that wherever you get our podcasts. Plus, don't forget to subscribe to get all the latest episodes as soon as they arrive. Also, don't forget to listen to our new Chats the Bar series every Tuesday for a short insight into business, money, finance, aspirations, dreams, and planning. If you are enjoying the series, please do leave us some feedback with a quick review, as this helps us grow and ensure we are giving our audience the best experience. Until next time, thanks very much for listening.